My fiancé canceled our wedding 2 weeks before the date because his mother told him I was not wife material, then acted shocked when I exposed everything she had been saying. My wedding was 2 weeks away, like deposits paid, invites already sitting on people's fridges, my dress hanging in the closet in that crunchy garment bag, and I was in the kitchen trying to get sticker glue off a bunch of little glass jars because I had convinced myself it was going to look cute with tea lights. And yes, I know. Kellen walked in and did not even take his boots off, which is not a character detail. It is just the first thing my brain grabbed because it was so wrong for him. He stood there with his phone in his hand like it was part of his body, like he had been gripping it the whole drive home. And then he sat down on the edge of the couch, not normal sitting, more like he was perched, and he stared at the blank TV. I asked him what happened because my first thought was his dad. His dad has heart stuff, and Kellen just shook his head. Then he took a breath like he had practiced it in the car, and he said he could not do this. He said he was calling off the wedding. I actually laughed once, not because it was funny, but because my brain tried to protect me by turning it into a joke. Then I saw his face did not change, and the laugh just died in my throat, and I asked him if he was serious. He said yes, and he said it like he was reading something off a card, and he said he was sorry, and he had been ignoring signs, and he could not make the biggest mistake of his life. I asked him what signs, because I am not proud, but I went right into logistics mode. Like if I can name the problem, I can fix the problem. And he looked away and said he did not want to argue. He said he wanted it to be clean. Clean, like canceling a wedding 2 weeks out is ever clean. I asked him if he meant postponing, because people postpone, people panic. People hit a wall, and he said no. He said he was done, and he said he had already talked to his mom, and he had already decided. My stomach went weird at the word mom, because I have never liked the way his mother talks to him. And I do not mean she is loud or strict. I mean she talks like she is the narrator of his life, like he is a character she manages. And it always made my skin crawl, but I kept telling myself it was not my place. He finally said it. He said his mom helped him see the truth, and the truth was I was not wife material. Not compatible, not ready, not we want different things, just wife material, like I am a couch he does not want to commit to. I asked him what that meant. And he did that thing where he rubbed his thumb along the edge of his phone case over and over. And he said his mom thinks I am only marrying him to lock him down, and that I am going to let myself go, and that I will embarrass him, and that I am selfish, and that I am not good with money, and that I would not be good with kids. It did not even sound like his words. It sounded like bullet points. It sounded like someone fed him lines and told him to repeat them until they stuck. I asked him, straight up, if he believed any of that. He did not answer right away. He stared at his hands. Then he said his mom has a way of seeing people, and he should have listened earlier. That is when my face went hot, because I realized he was not asking me. He was not even accusing me based on something I did. He was handing me a verdict someone else wrote. I told him, okay, if you are calling it off, what happens now? Are you leaving? Am I leaving? What are we doing about the apartment? And he said he would sleep in the second bedroom for now, and we would sort it out after things calmed down. After things calmed down, like this was a temporary headache. I asked him if he had already told anyone, and he said he told his mom. And then he said, my dad knows something is going on, and he said, my mom will handle the rest. That part honestly scared me more than the breakup itself, the idea of his mother handling my life, like I was already being packaged up and shipped out of his world. I told him I needed specifics, because if you are going to explode my life, I am at least allowed to know why. And he started talking in this vague way, like, he wants someone who fits better. He wants someone who will make his life easier. He wants someone who understands what it means to be part of his family. And I kept trying to pin it down, like, what did I do? What did I say? What moment is making you do this? And he kept sliding away from it. Then he said something that made my whole body go cold. He said his mom told him I do not respect her, and that I have been disrespectful the whole time, and that she has been patient, and that she has been testing me, and I have been failing. I asked him what tests, and he did not have an answer. He just said it had been building. I am not perfect. I am not pretending I have been some angel, but the worst thing I have done with his mom is not laugh hard enough at her jokes, and not let her reorganize my kitchen the one time she tried, and even that I said no politely, and she still acted like I slapped her. I asked him if he was really ending a 4-year relationship because his mom does not like me, and he snapped, like he finally got emotion, and he said it is not that simple, and he said his mom is protecting him. I remember looking over at the stack of place cards on the table, my handwriting, my little stupid careful cursive, and thinking, I cannot believe I wrote your cousin's name on cardstock while you were letting your mother decide if I am wife material. I did not scream. I did not throw anything. I just started asking questions in a calm voice that did not match how I felt, and he kept getting more irritated the calmer I got, like he wanted me to be dramatic so he could justify it. I asked him if he talked to our officiant, and he said no. He said his mom told him not to involve anyone yet because it would get messy, and he said he wanted to give me time to accept it. Time to accept it, like he was giving me a coupon. I told him I needed space, and I went into our bedroom and shut the door, and I sat on the floor with my back against the bed frame, and I stared at the hem of my dress hanging there, and I felt like my brain was peeling away from my body. I ended up texting my boss that I needed the next day off, which is embarrassing, because I have never done that in my life unless I am actually sick, and I sat there trying to decide what I even do next, because I was not just losing him, I was losing the wedding and all the money, and the awkwardness of telling everyone, and the part that kept looping was, his mom will handle the rest. That night, he really did sleep in the second bedroom. He took his pillow and charger and left like he was moving to another planet, and I heard him on the phone in the hallway whispering, and I know it was her because his voice gets smaller when he talks to her, like he is a kid again. The next morning, he was gone before I woke up, and there was a sticky note on the counter that just said, "We will talk later," with a smiley face, and I stared at it long enough my coffee got cold. I went to the bridal alterations place that afternoon because I had a pickup scheduled, and I was not thinking straight. I just kept doing the next thing on the calendar like a robot, and the woman behind the counter asked me how excited I was, and I said, "Yeah, it is coming up fast," and I felt like I was watching myself lie from across the room. When she went to the back, another employee came out holding 2 garment bags and a manila envelope, and she said, "These are for you," and I looked down and saw the envelope had Kellen's last name on it, but not my name, his mother's name. I said I think that one is not mine, and the employee frowned, took it back, flipped it over, and said, "Oh, sorry, she told us someone might pick it up for her if she was busy," and I just froze, because why is his mother picking things up at my alterations place? Then the employee said, "She has been in here a lot, she has a lot of opinions," and she made a face like she regretted saying it, and I asked, "A lot of opinions about what?" And the employee hesitated, then said, "About how things should look and what is appropriate." I do not know what possessed me. Maybe it was the sleep deprivation, maybe it was rage, maybe it was the feeling of being talked about like a project. But I asked if I could see what she left, because if it involved my dress and my money, I had a right to know. The employee looked uncomfortable, then said she cannot officially give me someone else's stuff, which I understand. But then she glanced toward the back like she was checking if the manager was listening, and she lowered her voice and said, "She left a packet, like a printed packet, with notes. She said it was for your fiancé. And she told us if he comes in alone, we should make sure he gets it." And she did air quotes without even thinking. I asked what was in it, and the employee said, "It is basically a list of concerns," and she said it like she felt gross saying it. I told her I am the one getting married, or I was, and I need to know if someone is messing with my vendors. And the employee finally said, "Okay, I cannot hand it to you, but I can tell you what it said," and she started summarizing. She said his mother had typed out a whole thing about how I am disrespectful and immature, and not the kind of woman who understands sacrifice. And then there were notes about my dress being too showy for a family like theirs. And she told them to make sure the neckline stayed high, and she had circled measurements like she was my mother. And she had notes about how Kellen should not be trapped into marriage with someone who will drain him. And then there were lines about my family being the kind that takes, which is funny because my family is not even involved. They are out of state, and they are not rich, and they mind their own business. I walked out of there with my garment bag in my hand, and I sat in my car, and I felt like I was going to throw up, because this was not just her being cold to me at holidays. This was her building a case file on me and handing it to her son. When I got home, Kellen was there, and he looked surprised to see me, like he had forgotten I also live there, and I told him I went to pick up my dress, and I told him what the employee said about his mom's packet. His face went white, then immediately hard, and he said she was just trying to help, and he said, "She has been worried about you too for a while," and he said, she did not mean it maliciously. I asked him why she was telling a bridal alterations place to make sure he got a packet about how I am not wife material, and he said, she did not want to hurt your feelings, she wanted to protect me. That was the first time I said it out loud. I said, "You are letting your mom ruin your life and you are calling it protection." He told me not to talk about his mom that way. I asked him if he knew she had been contacting my vendors, and he said he did not know, but he also did not sound like he cared. He sounded like he was irritated, I found out. That night, I started going through my wedding binder, not for sentimental reasons, but because I needed to see who she could have reached. I needed to see what she could mess with, and I realized half the vendor contact list was in Kellen's phone, which meant it was also in his mother's orbit, because she always helps him. She always knows his passwords. She always seems to have access to things she should not. I decided I was not going to sit around waiting for his mom to handle the rest. So the next morning, I called the venue coordinator, Suri, and I told her the wedding might be off, and I needed to know if anyone had called pretending to be me. And there was a long pause. Then she said, "Can you come in?" Suri is the kind of person who keeps her voice calm no matter what. And I think that is why it hit me so hard when she sounded careful, not panicked, but careful, like she was stepping around something sharp. I went down there, and she sat me in a little office that smelled like printer toner and lemon cleaner, and she asked me to confirm a security question we had set up when we signed the contract. And then she said, "Okay, I can tell you this. Someone has been calling, not as you, but as a family member helping, asking questions about cancellation, asking what happens if you do not show up, asking how to redirect deliveries, asking whether the venue can hold the alcohol because the bride isn't responsible enough." I just stared at her because it was so specific, and Suri slid a notepad toward me, and she had written down the phone number that called, and it was Kellen's mother's number. No hiding it, no blocked, just her number. Suri said she did not do anything with the contract. She did not cancel anything. She just kept redirecting the caller to the account holders, and she said she did not want to alarm me, but she was also not going to pretend it was normal. I walked out of that office shaking, and when I got back home, I told Kellen what Suri said, and I showed him the number, and he looked at it and did not even flinch. He said, "She was just trying to make sure you do not lose money." I said, "She literally told them I am not responsible enough to handle alcohol at my own wedding." He said, "She was worried about how you come across." I asked him, "Why are you okay with this? Why are you okay with her calling me irresponsible, selfish, not wife material, and why are you acting like I am crazy for being upset?" He finally snapped and said, "Because maybe she is right." That is the moment something in me just shut off, not in a dramatic way, more like my brain decided the fight was done, and all that was left was cleanup. I told him, "Okay, then you need to move your stuff out of our bedroom today, because I am not living in limbo with someone who thinks I am a mistake he avoided." And he stared at me like I slapped him, like I was the one making this messy. He left the apartment, and I sat on the floor and started calling vendors, and I am not going to pretend I handled it gracefully. I cried on the phone with the florist, and I cried with the photographer, and I cried with the woman who was supposed to do hair and makeup, and everyone kept saying they were sorry, and it made me feel worse, because it felt like people were pitying me. Then the calls started coming in, from people I had not talked to in months, Kellen's aunt, one of his cousins, even a woman I met once at a holiday thing, and every call had the same shape. They were checking in, but they were also fishing, like they had been told something and they wanted to see if I would confirm it. One of them said she heard it was for the best, and I asked what that meant, and she got quiet, then said, "Well, you know, marriage is hard, and some people are not ready." Not ready, like I'm a kid who forgot homework. That night, I got a message from Kellen's mom, Darla, and it was not an apology. It was not even pretending to be kind. It was a paragraph about how she is heartbroken it came to this, and how she hopes I will take this time to work on myself, and how she will pray for me, and how she knows I will land on my feet, and how she is sure I will find a man better suited to me. I stared at it for a long time, because it was the first time she had ever said directly, "You are not good enough," without wrapping it in a joke. I did not respond, because I knew any response would become part of her story, and I could already hear her voice. "Well, look how she talks to me. That is why she is not wife material." I slept maybe 2 hours, and the next morning I woke up and my phone had a voicemail from a number I did not recognize, and it was a woman's voice saying she is calling on behalf of Kellen's family, and she thinks it is best if I stop trying to contact Kellen, and she said, "He has made his decision," and she said, "No one wants this to get ugly. No one wants this to get ugly, like I am a threat, like I am the one who canceled the wedding." I sat there listening to it again and again, and all I could think was, she is doing this out loud now. She is not even hiding it. She thinks she already won. And the worst part is that, for a second I wondered if everyone would believe her, because she has that kind of voice, the nice lady voice, the church volunteer voice, the voice that makes people assume she is telling the truth. I do not know what the right thing is in situations like this. I just know what I did. I started collecting proof. Because if she is going to rewrite my life, she is at least going to have to work harder than a couple of phone calls and some whispering. Update, 6 days later. I have not been able to eat normally, not in a dramatic way, in a gross practical way. Like I keep forgetting to eat, and then I remember and my stomach flips, and I eat 2 bites of something and it sits there like a rock. And then I get mad at myself for being the kind of person who loses their appetite over a man who could not even take his boots off before canceling our wedding. Kellen moved more of his stuff into the second bedroom, which is a sentence I cannot believe is real, like we are roommates who had a fight over dishes, and he keeps acting like we are going to calmly sort it out, and I keep acting like I am not going to scream every time I hear a cabinet shut. Suri from the venue has basically become my lifeline, which is not something I expected, but she is the only person in this whole mess who has been consistently factual. She does not do vibes. She does not do gossip. She does, here is what happened. Here is what we can document. Here is what your contract says. She printed out a call log for me, not anything private, just dates and times and the number. And Darla's number is on there multiple times. And not just once, not just a curious mom call, multiple, like she was trying to wear them down. And the notes include things like, caller says bride is unstable. Caller wants to redirect deliveries. Caller asks about canceling without penalty because bride is allegedly at fault. Seeing it in black and white made me feel dizzy, because it is one thing to feel like someone is undermining you. It is another to see that they have been actively building a paper trail to frame you as the problem. I took that printout home, and I asked Kellen to sit down, not to fight, just to look. And he did the same couch perch thing again, like he is auditioning for the role of sad guy who has no choice. I showed him the call log. I showed him Darla's number, and I asked him, can you tell me why your mother is calling my venue and saying I am unstable? He did not even deny it. He just said she was stressed too, and he said weddings are stressful, and he said she was worried about the money. I said she did not call to ask about money. She called to tell strangers I am unstable and to try to control deliveries, and he said she did not mean it like that. I asked him if he has ever once in his life said, Mom, stop, and he got defensive and said I am trying to isolate him from his family. That word isolate made my skin crawl, because it is the kind of word Darla uses. It is the kind of word that makes you sound like a villain for wanting boundaries. I told him I am not isolating him. I am asking him to stop letting his mother call people and accuse me of things. And he said, you do not understand my mom. She gets emotional. No, she gets strategic. I did not say that out loud, because I have learned he is allergic to any sentence that makes him responsible. He wants every problem to be a fog. He wants it to be nobody's fault. So I asked him something else. I asked him what exactly she told him that made him cancel the wedding. He said it was a lot, and he said he does not want to repeat it because it is hurtful. And I said, you already repeated it. You already dropped the wife material thing like a brick on my chest. So now you can tell me the rest. He hesitated, then he said she told him I have a temper, and she told him I am disrespectful, and she told him I am not consistent, and she told him I do not keep a clean home, and that I will embarrass him, and that I talk down to him. I literally laughed again, because one of the complaints about me from Darla has always been that I clean too much, like I wipe counters while she is still eating, and she hates it because she thinks it is me being controlling. So hearing him say I do not keep a clean home was like listening to someone read a horoscope. It does not have to be true. It just has to feel plausible to the right audience. I asked him for examples, and he had none. He kept saying, it is just a pattern, it is just a feeling. And I realized that is the whole game. Darla does not need proof. She just needs to make him feel a certain way. She needs to make him anxious, and then she hands him a solution. Cancel the wedding, remove the stressor me. Here is the part where it starts escalating beyond hurt feelings. 2 days after that conversation, my supervisor pulled me aside at work and asked if everything is okay at home. And I said yes, confused. And she said someone called the main line asking to speak to HR about me. Not a formal complaint, just someone wanting to share concerns about my reliability and my character. I work in a small office, not tiny, but small enough that a weird call stands out, and my supervisor did not say who. But she said it sounded like an older woman who kept insisting she just wanted to protect the company. Protect the company, that phrase again, like Darla is some kind of guardian angel and everyone else is a danger. My supervisor asked if there is anyone in my personal life who might be trying to cause trouble, and I felt my face go hot, because what am I supposed to say? My ex-fiancé's mother is doing a slow-motion character assassination. I said there is a family situation, and it is being handled, which is such a nonsense sentence, but I could not fall apart in the hallway at work. I went to my car on break and I called Suri and asked if Darla has contacted anyone else, and Suri said yes, and she sounded tired, like she has been fielding this nonstop. She said Darla called again and asked if the venue could send a statement confirming the cancellation was initiated by the bride. And Suri told her no, and Darla got sharp like her voice snapped. And she said, you people are enabling her. And Suri said, ma'am, please stop calling. Suri asked me if I want the number blocked, and I said yes. And then I realized blocking her from one vendor is not the same as blocking her from my life. So I did something that felt both humiliating and necessary. I asked my union steward at work, Nadine, what I should do if someone is making weird calls about me, because I did not want to involve HR without thinking, and Nadine is not my friend. She is just the person who has seen every kind of workplace mess, and she told me to document everything, dates, times, what was said, and she told me to file an informational report with the police if the calls continue. Not because the police will swoop in and fix it, but because it creates a timestamp if things escalate. I hate that I even have to think like that. I hate that my wedding turning into a breakup turned into a workplace issue because his mother cannot just dislike me quietly. That night I went home, and Kellen was making dinner like nothing is happening, like he did not just cancel our wedding, and I asked him if his mother called my job. He looked startled, then offended, and he said, "Why would she do that?" I told him because she keeps calling my venue and calling me unstable and trying to get written statements blaming me, and now someone called work with concerns about my character. He said, "You are jumping to conclusions," and I said, "Okay, then call her right now on speaker and ask her if she called my job." He refused. He said that is disrespectful. He said I am trying to trap her. He said I want to humiliate her. That told me everything, because if he truly believed she did nothing, the easiest thing would be to ask. The fact he refused meant he did not want to hear the answer, or he did not want me to hear how she talks when she thinks she is in control. So I stopped trying to get him to be honest, and I started focusing on protecting myself. I called my dad, which I did not want to do because my dad does not do comfort. My dad does practical, and I did not want to hear his voice tighten with anger. But I needed someone in my corner who is not connected to Kellen's family and not invested in keeping things polite. My dad listened, then asked one question. "Do you have proof she is doing any of this?" And when I told him about the venue call log and the alterations place packet, he said, "Okay, then you need to show it to the people she is lying to, and you need to do it in a way she cannot twist." I told him I do not want a big scene, and he said, "She is already making a scene. She is just doing it behind your back." He was right, and I hated that he was right. So I decided to tell Kellen's dad, Ronan, because Ronan has always been quieter than Darla, and I used to think that meant he was nicer. But now I realize quieter can also mean checked out. Still, he deserved to know his wife is calling my workplace and trying to rewrite the cancellation story. I asked Kellen for Ronan's number because I did not have it saved, and Kellen gave it to me like he was doing me a favor. And I called Ronan and asked if we could meet somewhere neutral, not a restaurant, not a house, just somewhere we can talk without Darla controlling the room. We met at the community center near their neighborhood. They have these little multi-purpose rooms you can reserve for cheap, and I picked it because it is boring. There is nothing cozy about it. It is fluorescent lights and folding tables, which is what I needed, no atmosphere for Darla to perform in. Ronan showed up alone, which I appreciated, and he looked uncomfortable, and he asked if I am okay, and I said no. And then I put the venue call log on the table and I slid it toward him. He read it, and his face changed in a way that made my chest tighten, like he was not surprised, more like disappointed, like this is a thing he has seen before. He asked if I am sure it is her number, and I said yes. And I told him about the alterations place and the packet, and I told him about the call to my job, and I told him Kellen canceled the wedding because his mother told him I am not wife material. Ronan closed his eyes for a second, then he said, "She should not have used that phrase." I stared at him because that is what he focused on, the phrase, not the behavior, and I asked him if he knew she has been doing this kind of thing. He said Darla gets involved, and he said she can be intense, and he said she worries, and I said she is not worrying, she is actively sabotaging, and he did not argue with me, he just looked tired. Then he said something that made me feel both validated and sick. He said, she did not want Kellen to marry his last girlfriend either, and she did something similar, not to this extent, but enough. And Ronan said Kellen eventually believed Darla was right because it was easier than fighting her. Hearing that made me realize this is not about me. Not really. This is about a mother who cannot tolerate her son having a life she does not control, and a son who would rather burn his relationship down than tell his mom to stop. Ronan asked me what I want, and I said I want Darla to stop contacting my vendors and my workplace, and I want Kellen to either take responsibility or get out of my life completely. And I want the truth to be known, because I am not going to be painted as some unstable gold digger who got dumped for her own good. Ronan nodded, and he said he will talk to Darla, and I said, talk is not enough, because she will cry and twist and then do it again. I need something that actually stops her. Ronan asked if I would be willing to sit down with Darla and Kellen and him together, and I said yes, but not at someone's house, not at a holiday table, somewhere public with a witness. And I suggested the library meeting rooms downtown, because they have cameras in the halls and there are staff around, and it is quiet enough to talk but not private enough for Darla to claim I screamed at her. We scheduled it for 2 days later. When I told Kellen we were meeting at the library, he got tense and said he does not want to ambush his mom, and I told him nobody is being ambushed. Your mom has been running this whole thing. She can handle sitting in a room with me for an hour. He asked what I am going to say, and I said I am going to say the truth. He told me to be respectful, and I said, I have been respectful for 4 years and it got me here. The library meeting was exactly what you think it would be, fluorescent lighting again, a little whiteboard on the wall, a table that wobbles if you lean on it, and Darla walked in like she was attending a charity luncheon. She had her hair perfect. She had a tote bag with a little embroidered logo on it. She smiled at the librarian like she was being filmed. She hugged Ronan. She patted Kellen's arm. She looked at me like I am a stranger who wandered into her life. Then she sat down and folded her hands and said, I am glad we can do this calmly. Calmly, because she loves the word calm when she is trying to make you look unhinged. I did not raise my voice. I did not insult her. I just put the venue call log on the table and slid it toward her, the same way I did with Ronan. She glanced down at it, and her smile did not even flicker, and she said, I do not know what this is supposed to prove. I said, it proves you have been calling my venue, and the number is yours, and the notes show you were telling them I am unstable and irresponsible. Darla made a little sad face and said, I never said you were unstable. I said you were overwhelmed, which is normal for brides, and I was trying to protect you from losing money. Suri had also given me something else, because Suri is a professional who is apparently done with Darla. She had pulled a recording from the venue's office line. They record calls for training and safety, and she told me she cannot send it digitally, but she can play it for me in the office. And she let me record it on my own device while sitting there, which I know sounds sketchy, but she literally said, I am not giving you the file. I am letting you record what is already being played out loud in front of you. So I brought that recording, and I said, I have your voice on the venue line saying I am unstable, and Darla's head snapped toward me like she forgot other people can keep receipts. Kellen immediately said, you recorded my mom. I said no, the venue recorded the calls, and Suri let me record the playback because your mom would not stop calling, and she was trying to get them to put things in writing blaming me. Darla put her hand on her chest and said, this is exactly what I mean. This is manipulative. This is the kind of behavior that makes a man hesitate. Ronan told her to stop, which shocked me, because I have never heard him tell her to stop, like actually stop, not, honey, calm down, but stop. Darla blinked and looked at him like she did not recognize him. I played the recording, just a short clip, and her voice came out of my phone speaker, clear as day, saying she is calling as a concerned family member because the bride is unstable and might do something reckless with the alcohol delivery, and she wants to know how to cancel without penalty because the bride is at fault. It was so surreal hearing it in that room, like hearing a ghost speak. Kellen's face changed, and for a second I thought, okay, this is it. This is where he finally sees her. Then Darla started crying, like immediate tears, and she said she was stressed, and she said she was only trying to help, and she said she was scared Kellen was making a mistake, and she said she loves him so much she cannot watch him ruin his life. And Kellen's whole body softened, like a switch flipped, like the tears were the remote control, and he reached for her hand and started comforting her. That was when I realized I am not going to win Kellen back by showing him the truth, because the truth is not the point. The point is his mother's emotions are the center of his world, and everyone else is a threat to that. So I stopped talking to Kellen, and I looked straight at Darla, and I said, you have been telling people things about me, and I want to know what you told them, because I have been getting calls and messages, and I know you are spreading something. Darla wiped her cheeks and said she has only told people she is sad it did not work out. She said she has been nothing but gracious. I said, you told Kellen I am not wife material. You told my venue I am unstable, and someone called my work with concerns about my character. So no, you have not been gracious. You have been busy. Darla's eyes got sharp, and she said, I did not call your job. Ronan asked her if she did, and she looked at him and said, of course not. Then I said, okay, then you should not have any issue telling me why the alterations shop said you left a packet there for Kellen about my concerns. And Darla's mouth tightened, and she said, I have no idea what you are talking about. I said, they said you have been in there a lot, with opinions, and you left notes about my dress being inappropriate for your family, and you told them to make sure Kellen gets a packet. She said, I never told anyone your dress was inappropriate. I simply suggested something more tasteful. Tasteful, like she is the queen of taste and I am a stain. The librarian knocked on the door at that point because Darla's voice had gotten louder, and she smiled politely and asked if we are okay. And Darla immediately switched back to nice lady voice and said, yes, thank you so much. We are fine. The second the door closed, Darla looked at me and said, you are trying to embarrass me. And I said, you embarrassed yourself. I did not force you to call my venue and call me unstable. Kellen stood up and said this is going nowhere, and he said he is done with this, and he said the wedding is off, and we all need to accept it. I looked at him and said, I have accepted the wedding is off. What I am not accepting is your mother trying to damage my life on the way out. He said, you are making her out to be a monster. I said, no, I am playing you her own words. We ended the meeting with nothing resolved, except one thing. Darla slipped up. As we were leaving, she said something like, you always had a chip on your shoulder about your family anyway, and she said it in a mean little whisper, and I froze because I have never told Darla anything personal about my family. I keep it surface level around her because she uses information like weapons. The only person who knows the real stuff is Kellen. So either Kellen has been talking about me to his mom like I am gossip, or Darla has been digging through his devices, or both. And either way, I realized my private life has been feeding her story this whole time. When we got back to the apartment, I told Kellen I want out of the lease, and I told him I am done being polite, and I told him if his mom contacts my workplace again, I am filing a report. He looked stunned, like he expected me to just quietly dissolve. Then he said, "You are going to ruin my mom's reputation over a misunderstanding." That is when I said, "No, she ruined her own reputation, and I am just going to stop covering for her." And that is where I am now. The wedding is still technically on the calendar. The deposits are still sunk. My dress is still in my closet, and I have a call log, a recording, and a growing list of people who have heard some version of a story about me that I did not write. Update 3 weeks later. Surrey told me they asked Darla to leave, and Darla did, but not before saying she will contact the owner and she will make sure the venue knows who they are dealing with. Which is funny because she is the one who kept calling them. And Surrey told me the venue owner is the one who told them to start documenting every interaction because Darla was becoming a problem. Surrey also told me something that made my stomach drop. She said Darla tried to get the coordinator on lunch to confirm my home address so they could send final paperwork. And when the coordinator said they cannot confirm anything like that, Darla got snippy and said, "Well, I have it anyway. I just wanted to check if she moved yet." Moved yet, like she was waiting for me to vanish so she could step in and clean up the mess. That was the moment I stopped thinking of this as gossip and started thinking of it as someone trying to control the narrative so hard they are willing to mess with my job and my home life. And I know some people are going to read this and say, just block her, just ignore her. But you cannot ignore someone who is calling your workplace and telling HR you are unsafe. The next day at work, HR asked me if I wanted them to involve security if the caller shows up in person. And that sentence made me feel like I was going to peel out of my own skin. Because I am a regular person. I am not someone who needs security. I am not someone who has enemies. I was supposed to be planning a wedding, not explaining to HR that my ex-fiancé's mom is doing a slow-motion smear campaign. HR let me listen to the voicemail the caller left. And it was Darla. It was her voice. It was that same concerned tone. And she was saying she is calling as a family member. She is worried about my emotional stability. She thinks I am being vindictive. She thinks I might retaliate. And she hopes the company will take precautions. Precautions, like I am a hazard sign. HR told me they cannot share the phone number with me directly because it came through their system. But they confirmed it matched the number I gave in my informational police report. And Nadine sat there with her arms crossed and said, "Okay, so we have a pattern." And she asked HR to note in writing that the calls are not work-related and appear to be harassment. And HR did. And I walked out of that office feeling like I had swallowed something sharp. I went home and I had a package at my door. No return address, just my name. And I did not touch it at first. I just stared at it. Because at that point, everything felt like it could be her. I finally opened it with a kitchen knife like a weirdo. And inside was a printed photo of me from my own social media. One of those pictures from a family event years ago, and someone had circled my face in red marker. And on the back, in neat handwriting, it said, "This is not the kind of woman who belongs in our family." No signature, no threat, just that sentence. My hands went cold, because that was not just mean. That was someone taking the time to print something and mark it and send it to my house. And I know it is not a crime to be creepy, but it is still creepy. I called the police non-emergency line and asked if I could add it to my informational report, and they said yes. And they asked if I had reason to believe who sent it, and I said yes. And they asked if there were threats, and I said no. And they told me to keep it in a bag and not touch it more, and to call if anything escalates. Then I called Kellen, because my brain still does that stupid thing where it thinks he might act like a partner if something crosses a certain line. And I told him about the package. He went quiet. Then he said, "My mom would not do that." I told him it is literally her handwriting. Because yes, I have seen her handwriting. She writes thank you cards like it is a performance. She does that neat loopy print. And he said I am assuming. And he said I am spiraling. And he said maybe someone online is messing with me because I have been talking to people. Talking to people, like telling the truth, is what caused it. I asked him if he is seriously saying I deserve harassment because I told his aunt the truth. And he said, "I did not say that. I just do not want this to get out of control." I told him it is already out of control, and the person controlling it is his mother. He told me he cannot talk right now, and he hung up. That is the part that still makes me feel sick. Not even anger, just sick. Because he hung up like I was an inconvenience, like my safety is a nuisance. So I did the thing my dad told me to do. I took the proof to the people who were being fed Darla's story. But I did it in a way she could not twist into me being dramatic online. I asked Ronan if he would meet me again, and he agreed, and we met at the same community center room. And I brought everything. The venue call log, the clip of Darla's call, the HR note Nadine helped me get, the photo that showed up at my door, and I put it all on the folding table like I was laying out evidence in a boring crime show. Ronan sat there and stared at it for a long time. Then he asked me if I want to take legal action, and I said I want her to stop. I want her to be unable to keep contacting my workplace, my vendors, my life. Ronan said Darla is going to say I am lying, and I said then she can say it to someone official, because I am done trying to negotiate with a woman who thinks my life is a chessboard. Ronan nodded. Then he asked me if I would be willing to show this to someone else, and I asked who. And he said Darla's volunteer board, because Darla's whole identity is built on being the reliable one, the trusted one, the woman who organizes everything. And he said if the board sees she is using her time to harass her son's ex, it will matter. I felt my stomach flip, because I hate public conflict. I hate being perceived. I hate the idea of walking into a room full of people who already like her. And I told Ronan I do not want to do some big dramatic takedown. Ronan said it is not a takedown. It is a boundary. He said Darla keeps doing this because she thinks there are no consequences, and he said he is tired. That word tired came out of him like it had been sitting there for years, and I realized he is not surprised. He is just done pretending. So he gave me the info for the board meeting. It was at a local museum annex. They have this side building where community groups meet. And yes, I know how it sounds, like I am about to storm into the museum and expose a villain, but it was literally a beige room with stackable chairs and a table of bottled water. Ronan told Darla he was bringing me, and he told her it is important, and she apparently assumed it was going to be some apology tour, because when we walked in, she stood up and smiled like she was greeting someone at an event, and she said, "Oh good, you came to your senses." Your senses, like my dignity is a phase. I did not raise my voice. I did not call her names. I just asked the board chair, a woman named Mary's, if we could have 5 minutes at the beginning because it involves Darla's conduct and it might affect the organization. And Mary's looked confused, but she said okay. Darla immediately did her concerned laugh and said, "This is unnecessary." And she looked around the room like she was gathering allies. And she said, "I am sorry, everyone. This is just a personal situation. Emotions are high." Mary's asked what the issue is, and I said Darla has been contacting my workplace and vendors, making false statements about my stability, and I have documentation, and I want her to stop, and I want the board to know because she is using the organization's credibility as part of her performance. Darla's eyes widened, and she did that thing where she looks shocked first, then offended second, like she cannot decide which mask works better, and she said, "I have no idea what you are talking about. I have never contacted your workplace." So I played the voicemail from HR, not the whole thing, just enough that her voice was unmistakable, and you could feel the room shift, because it is one thing to accuse someone, it is another to play their voice saying the thing. Darla's mouth opened and she looked at Ronan like he betrayed her, and she said, "You let her do this." Ronan said, "You did this." Darla turned back to the board and said I was forced to act because she was harassing my son, and she said she was worried about his safety. And she said I was unstable and vindictive, and she said she has been trying to protect her family. Then I played the venue call clip, and I watched Mari's expression change from confusion to disgust, because Darla's voice was saying unstable again, and it was saying the bride is at fault again, and Darla started shaking her head like she could shake the sound out of the air. Darla said the venue must have edited it. She said it is illegal. She said I am manipulating everyone. And then she did the thing that made it really clear she was losing control. She lunged for my phone like she was going to grab it out of my hand. Mari stood up fast and told Darla to sit down, and another board member stood between us. And Darla froze like she realized she almost did something physical in a room full of witnesses. She immediately switched into tearful voice and said she is being attacked. She said she is being humiliated. She said she cannot believe this is happening. She said she has given so much to the community, and now she is being painted like a villain. And that is when I said the one sentence I had been holding back because it feels so simple, but it is true. I said, if you did not do it, you would not be in a room listening to your own voice doing it. It got quiet, like the kind of quiet where you can hear a chair creak. Mari's asked Darla if she has contacted my workplace, and Darla hesitated just long enough to matter. Then she said she called as a concerned person. She said she did not file a complaint. She said she just wanted them to be aware, and she said she did it because she is a mother. Mari's told her that contacting someone's workplace to question their stability is harassment, and Mari's said they are going to put Darla on leave from the board while they review it, and Darla looked like she had been slapped, not because she cares about me, but because she cares about how she looks. Darla stood up and said, "You cannot do this to me," and she said she will get a lawyer, and she said they will regret believing me, and she stormed out, and the door slammed hard enough the bottled water on the table shook. I sat down, and I realized I was shaking so hard my teeth were clicking, and Ronan put his hand flat on the table like he was grounding himself. and Maurice asked me if I felt safe going home. I said, honestly, I do not know. Maurice told me if Darla shows up at any board event again, they will have her removed. And she asked if I want them to make a note that Darla is not to use the organization's phone list to contact me. And I said yes. And it felt surreal to be saying those words in a museum annex room like we were discussing seating assignments. When I got home, Kellen was waiting in my driveway, not in his car, actually standing there, and my heart did that stupid flip it still does sometimes. Then it immediately sank because his face was tight and angry. He asked me what I did to his mom. I told him I told the truth, and I told him I played her voicemail and the venue recording in front of the board because she would not stop, and he said I humiliated her. I said she humiliated me. She called my workplace. She called me unstable. She tried to get vendors to blame me for canceling. She mailed me a photo with a message like I am some contaminant. He said, my mom did not mail you anything. I said, then explain her handwriting on the back. He told me I am obsessed, and he told me I am trying to punish his family because I am embarrassed the wedding got called off. That was the moment I realized he has already fully adopted her narrative, because it had the same shape, it had the same vocabulary, it had the same moral framing where his mother is protecting and I am retaliating. So I told him he is not welcome on my property, and I told him if he comes back uninvited, I will call the police. And he looked stunned like that was a line he did not think I had in me. He said I cannot threaten him. I said it is not a threat. It is a boundary, and I told him if he wants to communicate about the lease and remaining bills, we can do it through the property management office, and he laughed like I was being dramatic. He left, and I went inside and I locked the door, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something like control, not peace, but control. 2 days later, I got served papers at work, which is the most humiliating place to get served papers, because you have to stand there in your regular clothes with your regular badge, while someone hands you a document like you are on TV. Darla filed for a restraining order against me, claiming I was stalking her and harassing her volunteer board. The petition was full of stuff that was technically phrased like legal language, but read like her usual script. She wrote that I have been showing up where she is. She wrote that I have been contacting people to smear her. She wrote that I am unstable and angry and obsessed, and she wrote that she fears for her safety. Nadine read it and said, okay, so she escalated, and she told me to respond fast and not treat it like a joke. And she helped me find the court's self-help resources and how to file a response with my evidence. I spent that whole weekend printing, labeling, organizing, not because I wanted to live in paperwork, but because I wanted a judge to see the pattern, the phone calls, the voicemail, the venue call log, the recording clip transcript, the board chair's written note that Darla lunged for my phone, the photo she mailed, the informational police report number. I went to the courthouse for the hearing a little over a week later, and I felt like I was going to throw up in the hallway. Because it is one thing to be angry in your kitchen. It is another thing to stand in a hallway outside a courtroom holding a folder like your life is a file. Darla showed up in a pastel sweater like she was going to brunch, and she had Kellen with her. Ronan showed up alone, and he did not sit with them. He sat on the other side of the hallway, and that told me more than anything. In the courtroom, Darla put on her nicest voice and told the judge she is a frightened mother. She told the judge I am retaliating because her son called off the wedding. She told the judge I have been showing up to ruin her reputation. She said I recorded her illegally. She said I am obsessed. The judge asked her what contact I have made directly to her, and Darla said I keep forcing myself into her spaces. The judge asked her to explain the venue call log, because yes, I submitted it, and Darla said she called as a concerned party because I was unstable, and she said she did it to protect the investment. The judge asked why she contacted my workplace, and Darla hesitated, then said she never contacted my workplace. And then the judge listened to the voicemail, and Darla's voice filled the room again, and her face went stiff. The judge asked Darla if that is her voice, and Darla said yes, but she said she was worried. The judge asked if Darla understands that contacting someone's workplace to describe them as unstable can be harassment, and Darla started crying and said she did not mean it that way. She said she was scared. The judge asked Kellen if he has anything to add, and Kellen stood up and started talking about how I am twisting things, how I am bitter, how I am trying to destroy his mom because I cannot accept the breakup. Then the judge asked him a question that made Kellen freeze. The judge asked if Kellen has shared my workplace information with Darla. Kellen looked at Darla, then looked at the judge, and he said yes, because his mom helps him with paperwork sometimes. The judge asked if Darla has had access to Kellen's phone or accounts, and Kellen said yes, because she helps him. And the judge asked if Darla has ever made calls on his behalf, and Kellen hesitated. Darla turned her head and gave him a look, and it was not even subtle. It was that same look she gives when she wants him to follow the script. Kellen swallowed and said sometimes. Sometimes, like that word could hide everything. The judge denied Darla's request for a restraining order, and the judge told Darla to stop contacting me and stop contacting my workplace. And the judge told her any further contact could be grounds for me to seek my own order, and the judge told her to leave me alone. Darla walked out of the courtroom in a silent fury, and in the hallway she acted like she did not see me, but she was shaking. And for the first time I saw what happens when her nice lady mask does not work. She was just a furious person who got told no. Kellen stayed behind, and he looked wrecked, not because he felt bad for me, but because he just watched his mother lose control in front of a judge, and he did not know how to rewrite it into protection. Ronan came over and asked if I am okay, and I said I will be, and he nodded, and he said Darla is staying with her sister for a while, because Ronan told her she cannot live in the same house as him while she is doing this, and Kellen's face snapped up like that was news, and Ronan said, "You do not get to act surprised, you watched her do this." Kellen tried to talk to me in the hallway. He tried to say he did not realize how far she went. He tried to say he thought she was just worried, and he tried to say he is sorry. I told him I do not want an apology in a courthouse hallway. I want him out of my life, and I told him the lease is being handled through property management, and I walked away. That was the end of that chapter, but it was not the end of Darla. Because the next day, Maris from the board called me and told me Darla had shown up at a board event anyway, and she had tried to tell everyone I lied in court. And when Maris told her to leave, Darla shouted that she will ruin anyone who turns on her, and someone finally called security. Maris told me the board voted to remove Darla entirely, and they documented everything, and Maris said she is sorry, and she said Darla tried to use the organization's letterhead to request information from the venue, and they found it in the copier tray, and they shut it down. I sat on my couch and stared at the wall for a long time after that call, because it was like watching someone keep sprinting into doors that keep closing, and she still could not stop. I am not saying this to sound tough. I am saying it because it is true. Once Darla realized she could not control the story privately, she tried to control it publicly, and when that failed, she tried to control it legally, and when that failed, she tried to burn down whatever room she was standing in. And the whole time, Kellen kept acting like he was just caught in the middle. At that point, I filed for my own civil harassment restraining order, not because I wanted to spend more time thinking about her, but because I wanted a clear consequence if she contacted my workplace again, and I wanted it on record that I am not playing games. The court granted a temporary order, and Darla got served, and the hearing date got set, and I started counting down like it was another event on a calendar I never asked for. Final update, 2 months later. The restraining order hearing happened. And it was the last time I ever planned to sit in a room listening to Darla describe herself as a victim. She showed up with a different attitude this time, less tears, more cold anger, like she decided crying did not work so she was going to lean into authority. She kept calling me volatile. She kept calling me vindictive. She kept saying I am trying to punish her because her son made a wise choice, and I cannot accept it. The judge asked her why she contacted my workplace, why she contacted my vendors, why she tried to use a volunteer board's letterhead, why she mailed me anything. And Darla tried to explain it all as concern, like concern is a free pass. Then the judge listened to the recordings again, the HR voicemail, the venue call, and the judge read the notes from the venue coordinator. And the judge looked at Darla and asked if she understands that the repeated contact and the statements about my stability are exactly what harassment looks like. Darla started to argue, and the judge cut her off and granted the restraining order. And the judge ordered Darla to have no contact with me, no contact with my workplace, no contact through third parties, and to stop making false statements in ways that impact my employment. And Darla's face did that tight, frozen thing like she was holding herself together with pure spite. Kellen was there, sitting behind her, and he did not look at me once. He stared at the floor like a kid in trouble, and I realized he had chosen his role, not partner, not ex who feels bad, just background. After the hearing, Ronan stopped me outside the courtroom and handed me a cashier's check. He said it was from him, not from Kellen, not from Darla, from him, and it covered the portion of deposits that Darla's interference made impossible to recover. And he said he is sorry he did not stop it sooner, and then he walked away before it could turn into some emotional scene. Kellen texted Nadine's work number later, because he did not have my new number anymore, and he asked if there is any way to talk, and Nadine told him no, and she told him to respect the order and respect my boundaries, and that was that. The venue refunded what they could once the court order was in place, and once Darla was formally trespassed from the property, the alterations place let me pick up my dress without any more weird, helpful, family member questions. HR closed the file on their side once they had the restraining order copy for documentation, and the random calls stopped. The last thing Darla ever sent my way was a complaint to the property management office claiming I was violating her son's rights by changing the mailbox access. And the property manager called me. I told them there is a court order. They asked for the case number. I gave it, and the property manager said okay, and I never heard another word. The wedding date is just a date now, not an approaching disaster. The jars are back in a cabinet, and Kellen is someone I used to know, and Darla finally has a piece of paper that tells her no in a language she cannot rewrite.